For anyone that's tuned into these in recent weeks, they'll know that for the first few seconds, I'm always wittering like this, panicking that it's not quite live yet. I want to wait for a thumbs up from one of our esteemed guests to tell me and get that it is confirmed that it is live. But
it says meeting is now streaming.
Meeting now streaming. I don't want to trust that. I need to know whether it's on Facebook or not yet. That's the main thing. Yes, I've got a thumbs up from Malcolm. Yeah. Certainly a man who knows his social media. I'm sure we'll come to know about that. Thank you all so much for joining us, not just our speakers here, but also those of you that are tuning in live on Facebook, as that will build up. But panic not, you can revisit this anytime in the coming days and weeks. But don't leave it too long, because you want to be planning your day at Therapy Live, 26th of June. And a massive free conference, mainly clinical content, but then also 2 bonus streams for you that are getting announced today and tomorrow: the business of therapy, and then we have MSKR talking policy and the brave new world we all face post-COVID. Now, this one's been a really interesting one, because there's so much that the pressures on clinic owners and aspiring clinic owners and business owners in the healthcare game and therapy game is massive right now for various and obvious reasons. And so to get the best and brightest in the game to offer their insights into how we can tackle some of the tough topics, but also to not waste your time with having to read a dozen business books that don't apply to the sector, that are confusing and dated and don't necessarily apply to the context in which you're going to be existing. I've made those mistakes before. I don't want you to make those mistakes. And certainly these are the people that have helped me through those muddy waters over the years. And so I'm really delighted to bring them together on this stream to help you with this. Now, because the business of therapy stream is going to be slightly different in many ways to the other clinical streams, in which people are going to be dipping in and out a bit more liberally. In this instance, of course, you still can do that, and these sessions will stand alone well, don't get me wrong. But the opportunity for us to then use this as a bit of a microclimate and actually have an education journey that doesn't just flow through, but also joins itself back up and keeps it central to your purpose as a business owner, and to improve your educational process through Therapy Live is really important to us on this business side, because it's obviously really central to all of our hearts. So that's what we've put together for this. Looking forward to talking you through it with the speakers that are involved in that stream, including the people that have really helped me to join that together, which is who I'm going to introduce first, because they're first up on the lineup. Now, I've been working with a company called Learning Without Borders through my association with Design to Move over the years, and that's through Gabriel, Flores and Phyllis SantaMaria, who are joined here today, as well as on Therapy Live. Now, one of the things they do is they work with the University of Nottingham, amongst other institutions, to try and improve business education, but also stop that wastage that I was talking about before and focus directly to purpose and trying to aspire to be the therapist that you want to be, as well as the business owner you want to be. So they've really helped to join this up. I've got a couple of graphics I'll be able to share with you, but before we talk you through the sort of framework in which each session is going to be, we're going to introduce you to all the speakers as well. But before we do that, Gabriel, can I bring you in and just introduce yourself, if you would, briefly for the viewers, and what you've got planned for that first session, which is going to introduce the framework.
Hi, yes, welcome everybody. I'm Gabriel Flores from Learning Without Borders, and my colleague Phyllis SantaMaria, which you see here. We are working together to help create a structure for you to make the most of your experience at a conference. So one of the things that we find when we go to conferences is it's a big part of our mindset that determines what outcome we get. So for example, if we approach a conference with the idea that we're just going to take what we get and we just kind of go with the flow, then we get a certain kind of experience. But then if we participate, we start making connections. So we call that first level 1.0, when you're just kind of going with the flow. 2.0 is when you're participating and engaging. And 3.0 is when you intend to make a difference with your business using your experience at the conference. And so what we've done is we've broken down the business stream into 5 elements of your business. So you can kind of look at the different aspects of your business and see, well, what am I wanting to focus on, or what aspects do I want to take in my journey? And so throughout the business stream, all of the amazing speakers that you will encounter throughout the streams are helping you to get mastery at different aspects of your business. And it fits together really well. These guys have put together a really great program. So if you can see here, there's a diagram, and you can see that we have the 5 legs of the business. So Phyllis, do you want to introduce us to the 5 legs there?
Yes, so the session that we'll be doing, Confidence and Clarity in Turbulent Times, this is really about purpose performance. And we'll be introducing you or familiarizing you again with how important it is to be acting on purpose. And also the best way to use your skills and your energy so that you make the most of your business, so that you can actually make a real impact in the world with your business. So this is the stream that Gabriel and I will be doing at the beginning and setting the scene. So for example, Celia is going to come in about how to create that vision leading to survive in your business. And so we go on. We'll be introducing all of the speakers in our session today. But our first one is going to be on confidence and clarity in turbulent times. And then Gabriel will later tell us about how we'll finish off the session.
Great.
Oh, fantastic. No, really looking forward to that. And thank you for setting that context and that flow through. Something that only really when it was emerging and we were getting people together that it came I came to realize that we really needed to join the dots on that. And the educational aspect of these things is sometimes it doesn't get consolidated, and therefore some people might not. Again, that's that wastage that we're talking about before. So thank you for bringing that together. As you saw there, Celia was the first up after that, really, after that introduction session, as well as the clarity on turbulent times. So let me pull the titles back up on all of these newscasts we've done.
Could I offer one other point there for the beginning session that we're doing?
Go for it. Yep.
One of the things that we find help people solidify learning and turn the experience in the workshop into action is to have a structure through which to engage each of your streams that you're going to. So we've created a template to help you take notes in each session so you can solidify what you've learned and what actions you're going to take out of each session. So we'll tell you in that very first workshop how to make the most of those sessions that you're going to, that each of these fantastic people are going to be taking you through.
Absolutely, no, that's great. I think with these graphics that I've put together, as pretty as they are, we needed 2 things have had to happen. The titles have had to be brief because I can't get the words in. And the second thing, of course, is that it helps the speakers that are on the newscast to remember what it is that they're talking about. That's what all the clinical streams have been. I'm sure the business folk are far more organized than that, but the clinical ones have been remembering by me putting that up on screen. So not that she needed it, but Celia, your talks are there. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then also a bit about what that first session we've got in store?
Sure. I own a company called Painless Practice, and we work with therapists on the business side of their practice. So I know that therapists, they go into practice because they want to be a physio, or they want to be a chiropractor, or they want to be an osteopath. And they probably kind of haven't really thought or haven't even received the training on the business side. So our whole aim is to ensure that our clients are as confident as business owners as they are as therapists. So and the place that it starts is really knowing your purpose. So that's my first talk, is leading to survival thrive, really creating that vision. So I'm going to be kind of taking you through how to come up with that vision, how to articulate it succinctly, that it feels authentic and you feel passionate about it, and your team will feel passionate about it. Because if you come up with some kind of phrase that you think, oh, well, that's what I need to really be, that's what I'm going to pop on my website and whatever, and that you feel that's a bit cringy, then that's not your purpose. So I'm going to kind of give you some steps to think about what is your real purpose, what absolutely drives you. And then kind of thinking about how do you define your key values that will flow right through your patient journey, and putting a plan in place. I'll give you some templates to be able to put a very simple plan in place, because I think often what happens is you get very overwhelmed by having to put this huge big business plan in place, and you go through all the hoops and put this huge business plan in place and then stick it in the drawer. So I'm going to give you some hints and tips about putting a template in place that is all centered around your vision, that you can very simply follow and very simply put together. So that's my first session. Thank you.
Really looking forward to that. That's a brilliant point. Is that, do you think that that's a thing that some folk are guilty of then, is they'll almost like sloganeer initially. They'll like put together something that's just some sort of cheese ball thing for the website that they then associate as being a purpose or a mission because they thought it sounds nice.
Yeah, because you have to. It's really making sure that we articulate what is true to you, and like, why did you become a physio, or what keeps you doing it, and really connecting with that deeper purpose. Not the thing about making profit. Yes, of course, that's important in a business, but actually what motivates you. And so, yeah, I'll help you come up with your vision.
Yeah, really looking forward to that. That'll be brilliant. And we'll be certainly back to you in a little while, Celia, to hear about what the second talk's in store, as well as then chat amongst ourselves. If you guys, as you're watching along, we notice people are joining live. Please do make sure you're posting your questions, especially if you feel there's anything that you see as being areas that you would want these guys to make sure that they cover, that you feel are important. Pretty sure we've been thorough, but do let us know if you have any questions for them either now or things that you want to feed into the day and what you're looking forward to. So next up on the list, let me make sure I pull this up here. We'd have Meg Lowry that's on next, and unfortunately Meg can't be here today just because of the time zone issues. Sorry, this one's not in order, but Meg would be on next. And one of the things to say about Meg, I mean, it's something that I'm really excited for a session for a number of reasons. We've been wanting to work together with Meg for a while now. She's a hugely inspirational physio who typically, I mean, I've not necessarily seen her on sort of business therapy streams necessarily. She's a clinician who's also a business person, but fundamentally she's not into the sort of coaching and guidance side. She's just a huge tech innovator in our space. Treats out of Melbourne in a community practice in which she then is someone that created an app for rehabilitating the elderly patients that she works with to try to help to engage them in both physical and mental exercise through what she's Clock Yourself, which has been a hugely successful project. So what I've persuaded Meg to do, I mean, she could have done a number of talks on the clinical stream, but I've persuaded Meg to sort of tell her story of how she recognized the area in which she recognized and understood her niche. She understood how to serve them. She understood the science surrounding the evidence-based care delivery. And then she innovated by creating a piece of tech that then she brought to market and has done well to help her practice. And because she'd paid enough attention to the detail, meant that, no surprise, it then also helped thousands upon thousands more people that have already downloaded it. So if you haven't already, then check out Clock Yourself. And it's absolutely brilliant across age ranges for how you can go about doing that. Shame she can't be here today, but she's in Melbourne. I don't know if anyone checked, but whenever that was in the middle, it's probably in the middle of the night right now. But
it's ridiculous o'clock in the morning.
Is it? Yeah, I thought as much. And so if so Meg can't be here today, but she will be there, and we'll be using Clock Yourself for certain exercise breaks as well within the stream, which will be nice. So you'll be able to get a flavour of that and download it on the day, which will be really interesting. Just a little sessional breaks in between the webinars and stuff for a couple of minutes, in which you can see that and get us all out of his chair when we're all sat there in his pants on the day. So that was the next one. We then go on to Andy Hosgood's first session on ethical selling. Let me bring Andy in. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself first, Andy, and then what we've got in store for that first session?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for having me, Jack. I don't know if my internet's not the greatest, so I hope everyone can hear me all right. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm an MSK physio by background and had private practices. And then I have, over the last 5-6 years, transitioned into the consultancy market, of which we then set up the Elevate Group, which is just a group of professionals from HR lawyers to leadership coaches with loads and loads of experience. We've come together to create everything that a business would need per se as a whole group, and with me at the front with my experience working in private practice for the last 20 years. So that's where I am, that's where we sit as the Elevate Group, and it's been nice to share our things and what we're going to talk about. So ethical selling, I guess it's one of those, and I have to start off by saying that if any of you have been to a sales presentation before, you might be gutted with mine, because it's not going to be like it's Tony Robbins mic'd up full on kind of dance music. So if you're expecting that, then you're going to be gutted. I'm not going to upsell you a 2-day course for 5 to 10 grand that's going to change your world either. So again, if that's what you're after, then I'm sorry.
6 or 7. I've seen the pricing.
It's discounted if you come Therapy Live. You know, so I mean, fundamentally, the whole session is going to revolve around one question, and one that I ask everybody we work with. As a therapist, what actually do you sell? You know, and it's a question I kind of embrace because I think it's something which they're not very good at answering. And so I always like to open with that question to see what goes. So the session is going to be fundamentally about exploring your own business and giving you that opportunity. So I see this session as a facilitation session where you get the time to work through what you sell in your business, what is your product, if you want to fit in with what Gabriel and Phyllis have very lovely put together. You know, what is that product that we actually sell? And then furthermore, as a customer, what do people buy? You know, and then how do we match that up? And I'm not going to say too much on that because I know Celia's got an expectation matching presentation. So it links very much into what, well, I hope you're going to say that. I'm not stitching you up apart. But you know, it's one of those. So, and that's what we're really going to be about. But again, the most important thing I think in our industry, and I know this sits very much with you, Jack, and what you're doing is it's all got to be clinically based and evidence based of what we're doing. You know, and I'm very passionate about, I think, with the clinician background in mind, you know, we've got to be aware that the ugly side of it is the overselling, which we won't go into. But I think the honest side is, I think some axial therapists undersell themselves and undersell their services and what they can deliver. And I think that's almost as unethical as overselling. So we're going to be challenging a bit of that during it. It'll be slightly controversial, but again, with no massive upsell. So sorry.
Why not? Why not be controversial? No, I don't think there's going to be a shortage of that through a physio, and a Physio Matters audience, let's hope, are going to be quite used to that as well. Andy, with regards to the classic sort of scourge on healthcare sometimes is that oversell. And I think that especially our audience kind of recognise this idea of sort of selling sickness or inferring a need to therapies that the evidence doesn't suggest. But they sometimes do miss that piece where if they underserve their market, when the evidence points towards sort of a thoroughness and a coaching and a person-centeredness that we've kind of come to realise, that's a bit of a blind spot for folk, isn't it?
Well, I think so. It's something that I'm very passionate about because I think, and again, it is about, sorry, Celia, about matching what actually somebody needs and what you can deliver. And that comes down to, and I think we're all agree, I've seen lots of nodding heads, that comes to really spending time understanding, one, what your customer, I'm going to use the word customer, not patient, again, just to be controversial and non-therapy, because a business stream. And the fact being is some people do need more guidance. We all know that pain creates fear and all the obstacles that come. And some people do need that little bit more. And also if we're not finishing the job or we're not taking them physiologically to the end of the journey, then we could also argue that we're not completing it and they might think the job's done and there could be a chance of reoccurrence. And again, that sits in an unethical practice for me, if we don't do that kind of end bit. And so we're going to be challenging a lot of that, Jack, to be honest, in it. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. No, really looking forward to that. And you can see just how that naturally, especially following on from what Meg's going to be doing in terms of understanding that niche and innovating, it just naturally flows into them. Yeah. There is and sometimes it's even selling's a dirty word to people, but they are, as you mentioned, selling themselves, selling a service, selling a product, selling a team, whatever it might be. So really like that.
Yeah, with complete respect, you have to pay the bills as well, don't you? So you can't, as much as we'd love to treat everybody for free, unfortunately, our staff don't appreciate it, do they? So, we do have to still earn a bit of money to pay them. So,
sure. No, absolutely. No. And that's something that reality of business is something that is just going to be front and center of what we're doing on this stream, is that there's going to be no corners for squeamishness, really. We need to be honest about what and also I think that the real politic of it at the moment is really obvious. You know, there's been a massive challenge and upheaval to the broader economy, but also within healthcare. We've fallen through a number of cracks and people need to get serious. Now, what we don't want them to do is suddenly then become those unscrupulous cowboys that we all know of and know that our audience aren't. We don't want them to sort of end up going down that unethical route. And so the way to do that is through the middle and understanding how to ethically serve your customers. So again, just exactly a prime time for that, as well as it is, I would argue, of course, for the prime stream. Now, another man, this is a perfect little radio diversion to another man who thinks that it's the perfect time for Therapy Live, because he's helped me create it. And so Micheal Schumacher is from Therapy Digital, which is our marketing partner for Therapy Live, and someone that has the brains behind all the sort of tech and interfaces behind MSK Reform and the website that we created through that. That was the first time I met Micheal. They absolutely dazzled us with that project and have really helped to unlock something that our audience has found to be one of the best things we've done, and we would agree, is that we've then been able to create a digital interface that helps us to try and agitate for better health policy. I can't think of a better thing that we've done, and he's been at the heart of that, and him and his team have really helped us bring that to life. Now, Therapy Live is our next venture together, and it's going from strength to strength, of course, but what I couldn't do is not let him be front and center as well on a business stream, because he's someone that whose skills in marketing and understanding that side of it are massively important to us, and so I've dragged him onto the education side as well. So thanks for joining us, Micheal. Tell folk a little bit about yourself, your business, and also what they've got in store for this session.
Sure. So I'm not clinical in any way whatsoever. My background is totally corporate, and got into the whole physio world a few years ago and realized that physiotherapists just did not know how to market. And on top of that, you were talking about ethical stuff earlier, Andy. On top of that, you had so many agencies and so many people out there being completely unethical and selling physios stuff that just cost too much money, wasn't delivering results, and it was just treating physios and therapists as cash machines, as opposed to kind of long-term partners that you develop a good business relationship with. And so that's really what the company's all about. I work with people like Andy. Actually, we work with Andy on his physiotherapy practice. Jack, we've done stuff with Jack on MSKR, but also Choose Health, Physio Matters. We do a little bit with vendors, so we work with some of the big vendors in the industry, but in the majority of the time, it's working with clinics and helping them market themselves the right way. And most of the time that comes down to telling them what not to do. The amount of my day is often spent talking to clinics and telling them to stop spending so much time on Instagram or on whatever it is they're doing, explaining SEO to them, explaining all of these lovely terms they've read about and they've been told that they need. You know, we must have SEO. Well, not necessarily, actually. There are better things to spend your money on. And so we get into the nitty gritty really of how to market your clinic. We do website design because I think ultimately that's one of the most important things, because essentially that's where you're driving all of your potential patients, in whichever manner you're getting them, whether that's through Google or so on. We do Google campaigns, we do Facebook campaigns sometimes, and then the rest of it is about tech. We talk to customers, certain customers, about things like funnels. I'm sure you've all heard about funnels. Again, most of the time funnels are just not important or appropriate for physiotherapists, depending on what their aims are. But as I say, you know me, Jack, Andy as well, Celia, we've done some work together. I think we're very much about making sure that physios understand that it's not all about the latest fun thing that you have to jump on, like I must have 20 Instagram posts. That ultimately isn't going to get you patients. There are way better ways of getting those patients, and also not to get ripped off. I had a client yesterday who had just signed up with a company offering her to be first on Google Maps. Well, it's nonsense. It's not. The service they were offering was a scam, and so I helped her out, saved her some money. So you could actually say half of our time is spent helping you do your marketing and get more patients in, and the rest of it is spent saving you time and stopping you from doing all the stuff that and money, stopping you the stuff that you shouldn't actually be doing.
I knew I'd make that mistake one of these days and not unmute myself. I've actually, we won't name names, we've said not to yet, Michael, haven't we? But I'm one of those mistakes that I'm almost a testimonial case of someone that stretched for time, various different projects and things, especially around the time of MSKR, funnily enough, that I then thought attention to marketing was something that I always sort of prided myself on for Choose Health. And then I tried to then think, right, no, sod it, I'm going to get some proper professionals in. And then splurged money with an agency that didn't ever care about the identity of my practice and didn't understand the interface between me and my customers in any which way. Wasted money on poor campaigns, and fortunately was sort of rescued by Therapy Digital. Now that's one of the sides of the story where people make that mistake, just trying to then offload it and outsource it clumsily, which I made that mistake.
But saying that, Jack, you went to a good high-level agency. They were a recognized agency. The issue is often you don't understand what you're looking for, and they don't understand what you're looking for either. It's not quite as easy as just finding a patient. There are all kinds of conditions. If you're not in the industry, we know, not myself, but we hire therapists internally. We know thousands of different keywords for conditions. We know exactly what patients will buy and what they won't buy. And generic ad agencies will just fool you. And like with you, they had very little tracking. They couldn't tell you what they were getting through. They couldn't tell you how much a customer or a patient rather was you were spending to get them through the door. And so we see this all the time where agencies pull the wool over people's eyes, whether it's charging them £10,000 for a website or £300 a month, £400 for SEO, because it's an absolute nonsense. And we're very, me and the way we've worked together, also with Andy, it's about making sure you get results. You're all physiotherapists, you want to get results for your patients, and marketers should do the same thing for their clinics.
I think one of the other sides to it as well is that you've also always highlighted to me, and I know that's coming through in your talk title here that I've just pulled back up, is that there's sort of sometimes there's a complacency, especially when once established, to simply rely on what is the most classic reason that people say that they've come to see you or found you, which is this word of mouth, which of course the rest of the stream naturally feeds into. And don't get me wrong, I'm not underplaying that, and I doubt you would, but there is sometimes a bit of an over-reliance to it.
Well, I think I often say when clinics say, well, I'm not really sure, I'm completely full, and actually I don't need to do anything because I get all my patients through word of mouth. Well, that's kind of the final famous last words of every company that's gone bust. It's, I know what I'm doing, I've got enough customers, I don't need to progress, I don't need to improve. And particularly in today's world, you need to improve digitally, you need to have a digital presence, and you need to do it the right way, and you need to communicate your service. And I think if you don't do that, and if you don't continually do that, then word of mouth, it can dry out, and you need to keep, stoking the fire and bringing new people through.
One of the things as well with that is that there's the generational shift in, you might have a word of mouth is going to be particularly useful up to a point, but then eventually we're going to have some really technologically literate patients coming through generation by generation that even though they might have heard about you word of mouth, they're still wanting to pick up their phone and find you on Facebook or Instagram or whatever it might be. So it'll be TikTok. That's scary.
Well, it's actually different booking methods. We've got a lot of clinics who have their basic contact form and a phone call, but there's a lot of people nowadays that want to be able to book a call with you, want to be able to book a time slot to have a consultation with you. And if you're not keeping up, especially given all the young grads that are coming out now, and a lot of them are very digitally literate, and they can build a very beautiful website, and they know what they're doing on Facebook and social media. And before you know it, them with their tiny little cost base can run around grabbing all of your patients and potential patients and not have the experience that you do and the big clinic and the years of experience. And I think a lot of our clinics, we can see it, where they're losing potential patients to those younger generation. Often it happens over a sort of a 1 or 2 year period, but we see it all the time. And I think it's important to serve all of the people that are in the market, as opposed to just who you are used to serving. Yeah.
No, it's really, really interesting points, and then certainly looking forward to you unpacking that further shortly. Obviously, only 3 weeks away. 3 weeks today.
Got too busy doing all the marketing for Therapy Live.
Yeah, exactly. I'm amazed you've even put any slides together for that. You've been a busy boy for sure. Don't slow down though. You heard. We've got Celia back. So Celia, you're up next for your second talk. What have we got in store for that one? We've got expectation setting and matching.
Yeah, and that's proactively managing your team, and it kind of flows on from my initial talk where we kind of really establishing what your vision is. There's a great guy that I follow, and I'm sure many of you have heard of him, Simon Sinek, and he wrote a book called Start With Why. And one of his key phrases that I absolutely love and use all the time is that people buy what you do, people buy why you do it, not what you do. So they don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And so to me, so establishing the vision is a starting point of really establishing what are people buying? What are your patients actually buying? Your patients aren't buying the actual treatment, they're buying the result of the treatment. So they're buying the benefits of the treatment. So getting that, really understanding what that is. If you did a survey to all your patients and said, what percentage would you like to be better? Patients are not going to say, I want to be 50% better or 70% better. So you've got to find out, what does 100% better mean for your patients? Because that's what patients want. So I'm going to guide you through some ideas of thinking about that, and then how to convey that to your team. Because what we've got to be careful of is that your team are not all disjointed and have various different ideas. So, and it might mean that you have casualties. You might have some team members that just don't believe in your why. And so you've got to surround yourself with the right people. So I'm going to talk to you about first finding out how do you work out what kind of people you need around you. How do you interview for those people? And then in line with your vision, how do you set the key performance indicators to make sure that all your team are working together, they're all singing from the same hymn sheet, and they're all delivering what your customer really wants, not what you're kind of offering. So go through a few of those. I'll kind of give you some templates, I'll give you some exercises to be doing to really understand what is your why, and what does that mean in terms of delivery for your team members? And then also, how do you manage those team members? Therapists probably also didn't learn how to be good managers or leaders when they learned to be a therapist. And that is often one area that therapists really shy away from. They worry about managing their team members. So they don't, they almost, and also sometimes they ship in the night. So the owner of the practice works on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and their associates work on Tuesday and Thursday, and they just never talk to each other. And the other thing to also touch on in this talk is the benefits of the different employment models. So whether it's, what are the benefits and what are the pros and cons of self-employed? What are the pros and cons of employed? And what are the different options that you have in order to really make sure that you've got the right team in place in the right structure, you're managing them appropriately, bringing what the customer wants.
Oh, fantastic. I think one of the things that seems to be a classic mistake that a few have made is this idea of just not necessarily joining up that team atmosphere, especially not just in terms of, like you said, even literal logistics, not crossing paths, but also just this complacency of just associating that, well, we recruited you into the right parameters and therefore it'll probably be okay, not necessarily weaving them into the identity of the practice, but then also simultaneously being annoyed when they get a massive attrition rate, or the fact that I spend all my time training new staff, etc., or these associates come and go. It's, well, they never really attach themselves appropriately to your identity, and they could especially the killer frustration is then they just took all our ideas elsewhere or set up their own shop, etc. And it's just sort of like, well, you didn't necessarily appropriately nurture them because you didn't necessarily recognize some of those things when it was in the thick of it. And often they're getting dragged. I know myself, it's very tempting to get dragged into the thick of the fight, I suppose. It's sometimes I'm not saying this with any purity. I make some of those mistakes myself as an owner. Sometimes you do lose touch, but for you guys to be able to drag us back to that clarity and that point you've made about all of you saying about purpose and making sure that we stick to that is fantastic. So really looking forward to that once again. I've just mentioned on the chat stream, we've got some good questions coming in. We're going to come to them very shortly, so please do get those in. Some really lovely points. including an evening folks from Ollie Colburn, even put in brackets, even Jack. So he was saying hello to you lot, and because he's been, it's a classic little dig there from Ollie. That's what I have to deal with from our audience. Very keen fans. Talking of fans, next up we would have Phil Badley. Now Phil's not able to make it, but he does work closely with Andy, and so I'm sure Andy will be able to give us a bit of an insight into what Phil's got in store for us, because that's going to be a bit about that feedback and fandom that you can try and create and the importance of it.
Yeah, and I think it follows on really well, because I think, you know, one of the most important things that we recognize is, you know, feedback is really important. So to kind of follow on from what Celia was saying, you know, from a leadership perspective, we've got 360 feedback. So we understand how well we're doing as a leader, and we can go down that pathway. But I think also as a business owner, and one of the things I'm very passionate about, which most therapists don't seem to do really well, sorry for those who are listening, they don't get feedback from their customers well enough. And, you know, and I always ask the questions of why. And I guess there's a level of, you know, they're afraid of negative feedback or stuff. But fundamentally, if we're all in service improvement, which we all seem to be talking about really well, of how do we improve our businesses, then actually a customer that's been through your experience is probably the best person to give you that honest feedback. And so that's allow you to make some changes. So what Phil's going to, you know, hopefully look at is how to then use that feedback and then again follow on from what Celia was talking about there, is actually that can actually help improve your leadership, because it almost follows on nicely. You know, if your team see what you're delivering is giving great customer feedback, it almost feeds in the funnel again to drive that forward. So I think that's a really nice follow on from what Celia was saying there, and that's kind of what Phil's presentation is going to be based around. I hope I've done him justice there.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm sure we'll hear from him if not.
I was going to say it'll be straight in my inbox in a minute if I've stitched them up there. But...
Actually, we're just having to delete and censor some comments from a Phil Badley in the comment section on Facebook. He's kicking off, making a rate scene on the feedback comment.
The good news is, if he knew how to comment on Facebook and had to probably watch the live stream, I could have guaranteed you that. But the problem, so I think we're all right for now. I'll share it with him afterwards.
Look, Andy, you just got to deal with it. It's part of the 360 feedback that you've set up as a leader. Yeah. Comment section's kicking off.
That's it.
That's all right. Right. Thanks for that, pal, and thanks for channeling Phil for us, Malcolm. We work together on a number of things. I'm a proud ambassador of Sports Injury Fix, of which you're a director and leader of. I would say that you have your finger in many pies, but that would underestimate it, I would say. And so we're delighted to have you on the stream to share your wisdom. One of the things that I've noticed, and one of the titles that I was always going to try and push your way, was that just watching your meticulousness in and around sort of systems and making sure that things stay on track. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the magic sauce is in that. Having worked within those systems, I'm just intrigued as to how you set them out. So what's this? Could you first, I'm sort of giving you intros and sort of talking into your topic already, but tell us a little bit about yourself, but also what you've got in store for us.
That's all right. You can do it far better than me. So yeah.
I get excited, don't I? I get excited. Sorry, mate.
That's all right. So yeah, for those that don't know me, Malcolm Sloan. So similar to Micheal, then an outsider to this industry, but just, I started life, well, still am, scrawny bloke, made of glass, constantly breaking himself. So we've spent way too much money with the services of various therapists. Got really frustrated with it and just came into it going, oh, this is ridiculous. Why? I'm a runner and I've hurt my knee. Why can't I find treatment from who specialise in running injuries and knee injuries? I've no idea what a podiatrist, a physio, an osteo, a sports therapist, a sports rehabber, a soft tissue, a blah, blah, blah. No idea. So Sports Injury Fix came about as just trying to simplify it from a patient perspective. Ended up partnering up with an amazing tech guy called James Edgeworth, and a name that may be familiar to a number of you, a guy called Mike James, aka the endurance physio, and then between the three of us, stumbled on something that people seem to like. Patients really bought into it. And then we had a number of industry association chairmen went, we love this simplicity. actually from a business side and the tech which you're building, particularly the sub 5-person therapist business, a lot of solo businesses, part-timers, there's just nothing that helps them. The stuff that's built by techies for techies, it doesn't understand the practice, it doesn't make their life simpler, it doesn't make patients' life simpler, or it's massively overpriced and clunky. So yeah, we kind of got, accidentally, or if you like, stumbled into the area and ended up building a raft of tech just designed to make therapists' lives simpler. And patients' life simpler. And particularly, you hear a lot of therapists just talk about from the therapist side, but actually they often forget, well, how is it from a patient side as well, or customer side, to use Andy's terminology, which actually I agree with a lot as well, actually. Customer, client, patient. I think it's helpful to think about them in all three terms. And then, various other pies have come about from it, which I won't bore you with all of them, but one of them, again, is it's been about not only were we conscious of creating software that helped therapists, but it was about solving their problems. And so that was about solving, how do we do the payments and the notes and the templates? And actually something that's really helped us as a business in the COVID situation is actually we've been advocating, contactless, keeping everything free, keeping everything simple, being able to get your patients to fill everything out beforehand, so you're not sat there watching them fill out paper forms which you then have to file for 7 years, etc. And that's worked really well. But then it's, well, actually, from my background coming at it, I don't understand what the differences between the professions are. We know a lot of therapists are stuck in professional silos. How do we break down those barriers? So how do we get them to learn from each other? So how do you get sports therapists learning from physios and sports rehabbers and trying to break down some of those old chips on shoulders, misinterpretations, misunderstandings, and get them to realize there are good therapists and there are bad therapists. And that's certainly something that, if those of you that have listened to Mike will know, that that's something that he's very proud of, and that's something that we really push. And so then it was, people were saying, okay, well, you're helping us, so how else can you help us? And you're starting to make a lot of contact with some really good people. We started connecting up with people, obviously, like yourself, Jack. And so actually that then led to, well, how do we get those golden nuggets and that practical advice? There's a lot of brilliant clinical advice and guidance that's out there. There's a raft of free CPD stuff that's hard to wade through, but how do we save people time and how do we get those nuggets? So then therapistlearning.com got created with that view of, of that niche of, it's online, anybody around the world can access it whenever they want to, however they want to. There's no barriers for it, and it's focused on that real practical application, nuggets of information.
With that, because it reminds me a bit in a way of what Meg's done, where she's sort of innovated from a clinical side and then lent into tech. Naturally, from you as an athlete, you've then observed the market that you were frustrated. Okay, sorry.
I'll take it, but yeah.
you don't want to be associated to athlete. No, that's fair enough. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, as an amateur clumsy runner, then you then were to notice gaps and frustrations within a space to then have innovated within it. How has that led to you, or what dispositions do you then possess that have made you then lead by this systematic approach that I was describing before, that then leads to your sort of talk title and what you've got planned for us at Therapy Lab?
Yeah, it's something that I think is in all of us, but often we're scared to admit it, which is I get bored really easily, I get distracted really easily, and I've got a big lazy streak as well. And I can't remember who did the quote, but I remember it, and it always stuck in my mind, which is, if you want something to be done efficiently, get a lazy person to do it. Because you can guarantee the lazy person will find the most quick and efficient way of doing something. And it's so true. So actually what I found, and so from my background, a bit of context for it. So actually, worked in the city, started life doing the Barclays grad scheme. So I've, don't judge me for that, but working at the kind of high-end banking side of things, where time is money, quite literally, and there are people that are incredibly cutthroat and will happily stab you in the back for a few extra pounds, but at the same time you realize it gives them real focus. They will not do anything that doesn't add value. And then basically spent the last 13-14 years working defence, policing, security, like a civil servant, and as a management consultant as well. And again, working at that real sharp end where some of the decisions, and if you don't have your processes and comms right, well, actually, sadly, lives are lost. And that really focuses the mind and thinking again of question everything and really look at it. And so what that mean was actually become, so I've been told, pretty good at actually just getting things done and making things efficient. And I tend to get a bit grumpy if it's not, as some of my team will tell you as well.
I wouldn't know. I've never put a foot wrong in our systems, have I, Mark? So I wouldn't know. But I've heard on the grapevine.
Yeah, Jim on the other hand, but that's another story.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's all Jim's fault. We'll talk about that on another stream.
But yeah, and that's something that I've found is fascinating, because coming into the therapist world, obviously most therapists are trained, brilliantly trained as clinicians, and they are really bright people, but actually they haven't had some of that framework and training around some of the business side. And obviously the people on the screen are, some of the best minds around and are absolutely brilliant. And, some of what they've already said tonight is just gold in itself. And actually then one of the challenges is you're going to have these people sat around and they're going to be hearing this amazing stuff, and they're going to come away with it with just this huge list of what I think I should do, what I've been told I need to do. And I think sometimes actually when we're talking about the business side, all of us are a bit guilty of saying, you need to do this, you should do this. And actually when there's enough of us all saying that, that ends up to a massive to-do list, which the therapist then doesn't have the understanding or time or tools to know, well, how do I then prioritize it? How do I work out what I don't do? Well, actually, I'm being told I really need to do this, but actually I've got somebody else as part of my team that's brilliant at doing that. So I don't need to do that. Actually, what I need to feel comfortable is outsourcing that and giving a clear message of outsourcing it. And so some of it is about adapting what therapists do every day in their clinical side. They make a decision. Do I do this myself? Do I treat this patient? Or is this something that I'm not quite sure about, but I need to invest in a bit of learning, a bit of time, maybe a bit of mentoring, so I can truly help this person? Or is there somebody better placed to help this person? Therefore, I'll refer those on, and that creates a lovely, feedback referral loop if I do it well, and it's better outcomes for everybody. And actually, you can take that from the business side as well. So it's about looking at it and going, right, well, what is there? What am I being told that I should do? Let's work out what actually suits with my skill set. What can I do? What is important? What can I control? And what are the things that I can outsource? And then probably the most important thing with it all, because you'll end up that long list, is I think something Micheal alluded to earlier, is what can I feel comfortable not doing? I've been told by all these brilliant people that I should do all this stuff, but actually you can guarantee for every therapist, there'll be a good 70% of that they could not do, and they would still be very successful if they focused on those nuggets that are right for them.
And that efficiency speaks to the ability to put different hats on and also empathize with the customer experience, the patient experience, in such a way that then you can try to create a situation that decreases waste. And we talked about learning waste and potentially the opportunity to make sure you channel and focus the mind, both for our experience within the streams, but also then we know that is a really key component to efficiency within practice, especially for people that are often straddling a clinical role and a business role and things, and not knowing which way to lean sometimes. Andy, I want to then bring you back in, because it speaks to your next talk, really, is that what is that experience about, and what's your next talk gonna tell us about that perfect customer experience?
What's interesting about this is a framework that I've been sharing with businesses for probably the last 5 years, and it can't be any more prevalent, because it talks about all the touch points of a customer makes with your business from start to finish, from the marketing, which we just say, just get Micheal to do it. No point wasting your time with stuff. All the way through to how we book a system. So this talk is about creating a framework. Now, with the current situation in where every single business is now either preparing to opening with incredible guidelines. I'm not going to go into the policy, Jack. I'll leave that one to you, pal. But
yeah, thanks.
what I am saying is that, you know, a lot of business owners are spending a phenomenal amount of time looking at the journey a customer takes through their business because of COVID. Now, we've been talking about for 5 years. Actually, we should be looking at that. We should be always looking at that, because that is about, you know, and again, a controversial thing is we are in a customer experience industry. Fundamentally, what I believe is that, you know, I know Celia alluded to it before, is it's the experience almost part of the things that we sell. So it's important that we understand how a customer, I'm going to stick to that word, goes all the way through the journey at each individual level, so that you can, you know, coach your team how to do it well. A customer understands what to expect when they arrive, you know, and that's the other thing, isn't it? Everyone's business is different. You know, what you deliver at, you know, one practice and what you're going to get at Choose Health, it's going to be a different service, isn't it? So what we've got to do is, once you understand what that journey looks like, then you can give that to Micheal and he'll market it for you. But then at the end of it, there's a cycle, because then we get the feedback and that feeds back into everything else we've been talking about. So my talk fundamentally is going to be about how to create a framework, so that in a dead simple way, that along the way you can assess each individual step, and then you can then at the end of quarterly, you could be able to look at the success of that. And then again, kind of following on from what Malcolm was saying, it allows you to focus where you need to work on, rather than going, right, where do I start? If you can analyze each of these 10 steps on this framework that we're going to go through, it just means that you can be able to track what's working and what isn't. And so you can spend time on going, well, actually, that's not what I expect. Let's put my time and effort this month and money into this part.
I think one of the things I've found interesting when trying to sometimes just support, sometimes hearing them out, sometimes just observing various different practices or even departments of different scales go through this crisis that we've been through, where they've then ended up having to close their doors. There's some that are so many weeks ahead, both in mind and action, mainly because they've known those touch points for other reasons, and therefore the literal touch points of their customers are being considered for safety reasons, for hygiene reasons, and it is literally meant that they are weeks ahead. It's something that the industry's got to learn, not even just for business, but for safety, that governance is something that really is integral to you understanding your customer journey.
But and that's something that's, you know, I mean, and I'm not taking away the situation, and I'm not taking away the severity of the situation, but if we can take one positive, everyone has had to overanalyze their business and how a customer passes through each step point. So, you know, I would argue that actually, once we have found, dare I say it, the new normal, that actually, if you've done it right at this level, you could come out with a miles more efficient and effective business once you've got through this first thing. So, you know, I think at this moment in time, especially if you're closed or planning to open or opening, actually what you're doing is overanalyzing each point. So what we're going to do is just dead simple, put a framework together for that people can follow.
Nice one. I want to try and do it. Just obviously, we've got some great comments and questions coming in. I'm going to go to those very shortly. But also, if you fancy doing a little impromptu poll in the comments for which has been the most overused phrase of COVID in therapies, is it A, the word unprecedented, or is it B, the term new normal? I honestly, it's a massive toss up. They've both been used and abused. Andy's just succumbed to one of them there. I've used the other one. Unprecedented times for us to aspire to the new normal, which has been used and abused most. Please comment in the comment section and get your final questions in, because we're soon going to be coming to them, because we are coming towards the end of our journey through the business of therapy stream. Back to you, Gabe and Phyllis, to tell us about what that final session does, and it brings us pretty close to the numbers and studying some data from what I understand.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. This is really enlightening. And Gabriel, could we just pull up our graphic here, if you do the screen sharing?
Are we?
Okay.
Is that? Yep. Good. We're on.
Right. And as you can see, we've got our 5 Ps here. The purpose, which Celia is going to be leading us through the product. what's the offering that each practice has. And for the team and the customers, we've got ethical selling, marketing, word of mouth, and proactively managing your team. And then when we get to who needs feedback from Phil, and getting it done, systems and projects from Malcolm, and then the perfect customer experience from Andy. So this brings us to measuring for success and making an impact. So Gabriel, could you take us through how this is going to enlighten the people that come along and how it links to purpose?
I think I did a Jack there, was speaking while muted.
At least it's not just me. At least we've got another amateur in the room. Thanks, Gabe.
So, yes, first off, it's been really exciting hearing everybody share about the talks that they're doing, and you can hear how they're all really connected with each other and they're all really resonant. And so what we're doing in the measuring for success and impact, we're kind of looking at two key aspects. The first thing is looking at, well, what is it you actually are measuring in the business? So usually when people are told, much like was said earlier, that sometimes you just do things because you're told that's what you ought to do. And what really is important is that we say, well, okay, what is it we're here to solve? What's the pain we're trying to solve, or the problem we're trying to solve, the why that we're engaged in here? We get that clarity, and then we go look at, well, what is it we measure to tell that we're achieving that why, that we're achieving that purpose, or we're achieving that goal, we're making that difference that we set out to make. So you can see on this graphic, linking the performance and purpose legs there is really important, right? And listening to what Celia was sharing about and getting clarity about what you want to build. And she also talked about how you're going to measure that you're moving that forward. So what we're doing in our stream is giving you a chance, having gone through all of those conversations with these great speakers, to, okay, you've got all that. Now, what are you going to take action on? How are you going to put that together? And what are you going to set out in terms of the next maybe 6 to 12 months in order that you can take everything you've learned and apply it directly in your business? You know, was speaking a minute ago, I think it was Andy, talking about being efficient and making sure you stay focused on the things that you can do something about. And then perhaps you're collaborating with others to get other things done, or maybe you're just saying, well, I'm going to put those aside right now. I think that's a really great illustration of how we stay focused. So in that session, we're going to use it as the training or sort of working ground through some exercises to allow you to solidify that learning, so you make the most of everything you've done, both through the streams that you've been through, as well as preparing for the weeks and months ahead, and taking the actions that you need to take.
And I'd just like to add there that we're preparing for all of the people that are coming along. We're preparing a sheet, what we call the idea sheet, where they'll be able to be taking notes for each of the people that is presenting, and also to be aware of what action they're going to be taking, so they can be noting that down and coming in with the questions on that as well.
Yeah, the virtual interface is fortunately, it's very interactive. We've got an ability for questions and chat functions and things like that, but also the way in which you can up and down vote questions, which the moderators will be able to bring to the speakers, as well as then giving out handouts. So there's certainly nothing that an in-person event where you might have sheets on your seats that couldn't be emulated much more efficiently and much more green, less wasted paper on our show. So we've got lots of handouts as well that are going to be relevant and are going to just direct that attention. Now on this final session, I'm just interested as well in, is that a mistake that you feel is classically made in business, where people have got generic KPIs, or they're just measuring what they feel obliged to measure? Gabriel? Yeah,
this is a big, there's a couple of challenges that arise. First of all, that people measure things because they think they ought to. Right. And sometimes there's things that they ought to measure that they're not. And what we'll also in that session have Heather Watson, you guys may know from Design to Move. And we've actually been working with her to develop the way she organizes and measures her business. And she'll be sharing about her journey and how she's kind of used these principles to develop her business over the last few years that we've been working together, to illustrate how do you focus and measure those things that actually make a difference in your business for everyone who's attending and kind of can hear yourself as a therapist, because Phyllis and I aren't therapists. We work across, multiple industries, coming from a background of education and business development. And so it'll be really great to have Heather there, really helping you understand how this applies, how these ideas apply in those very specific circumstances.
Right, and I just wanted to add that Jack, you said when we were talking the other day about how working with the numbers with you has helped you greatly, so that you can focus on what you really love in your business.
Yeah, I think that's been certainly something that I've come to realize, is that personally, I'll end up finding myself leaning away from, leaning into my strengths and away from my weaknesses, to such a point in which sometimes even just the numbers I'm less interested in than the words. That'll surprise everyone, won't it? Because I use a lot of words. But essentially, by me coming to realize that by paying attention to an appropriate set of indicators and some of the hard cash value factors affecting my business, means that if you get that in line, then it means you can focus more on what you're bothered about and what you're good at, and what your purpose is around your business. And so sometimes that neglect of numbers, and sometimes this perception that I'm going to even neglect the broader business variables around it, and I'm just all about the clinical, all about the patient. If I can spend an extra 10 minutes with every patient, then that's me feeling like I'm suddenly a Puritan ethical practitioner, whereas that's all well and good until the doors close and don't reopen, which is what unfortunately some people are having to face if they've been playing fast and loose with that they've not been measuring themselves sensibly and efficiently. Now, I'm by no means the best in that game, but I'm certainly better than I was, having worked with Learning Without Borders, as well as being influenced, of course, by the speakers on this stream and the principles as well from what they're describing. So you're all in for an absolute treat in that direction. Now, I want to throw to some questions before we close up. I realize that time is of the essence. This is part of the problem with our speakers being so courteous as to join me, means there's lots of them and lots of talks, and so we've ended up doing a big lap there and covered a lot of ground. I've thrown in a few sub questions as we've gone along, but I've got a few questions here that have emerged on the feed. One of them is particularly popular. It's been upvoted a little bit there, which is from Mike James, a friend of mine and Malcolm's and famous troublemaker, usually talking all things clinical. But he's made a point saying his fear is that this stream, that thousands of therapists will be attending, not working in private practice, maybe directly, that might not feel it's applicable to them. Yet looking at the content, it feels like it's understanding services and understanding your position within a wider market is important. I'm paraphrasing, but how would you guys suggest it can appeal to therapists that this information is actually really applicable to a variety of different features?
Well, one of the things that I would put forward, and I think probably from the way I've heard what Celia's been saying, she'd probably mention it to you. Purpose starts with you. Whether you decide to have your own practice and run your own business, or you're a therapist as self-employed, or you're a therapist who's employed, getting clarity about what you're about and how you are basically someone who gives a service to someone. Having that clarity will help you be a better therapist, and it'll also help you focus. So a lot of therapists spend a lot of time earlier in their career, just going through what they know is the clinical learnings they have to do in the standard pathways, without really considering what is it I'm really up for, what is it I'm really about, what's the impact I want to make, and then starting to kind of plan their journey early in their career. So that they can actually follow that pathway. And a lot of the things you've heard everybody say here are things that you would even benefit you as an individual as you continue or begin to chart your journey if you're early in your journey, or consider how you might be even more valuable or more useful in your working environment if you're an employee inside a service.
Celia, teamwork and leadership, pretty transferable life skills, right? So
absolutely.
people looking on at this, it's not going to be all the nitty-gritty stuff of business and therapies. It's also going to then map onto some broader life skills that folk, I'm sure, can take stuff from.
Yeah, I mean, you could be working within the NHS and be managing people, and so the second talk that I'm doing is really going to be focusing on a lot of the skills that you can that you can motivate people, you can get the best out of people. Just giving you some kind of skills. It doesn't matter if you don't own your own practice. You could be working in an environment where you're managing people. But I think what Gabriel was saying about, really discovering your vision and your why, I think whether you're working for someone or working for yourself, that's so important. What would be really tragic is if you got like 30, 40 years down the line and then kind of looked back and thought, oh, I really wish I did this, or I wish I did that. Or so, you know, no matter where you're at right now, let's relook at your vision. What is your vision? What is your purpose? What is your why? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? You know, and really establish that. And so it doesn't matter what position you're in. I think that is relevant to any practice owner or, you know, employee or.
And
Sorry, go on, Phyllis.
I must say that from what Heather was saying, we were just discussing with her the other day, and she said having that clarity of purpose, and with my skills, with my real skills, I know that I can go into any environment. Come what it is, it gives me that confidence, so that whatever gets thrown at me, she says, I know, for example, with my purpose and with my principles, I can go into a COVID ward and I could really be of service there, or many other places. So that's, I think, what's so essential.
I love that.
And I also think so. I also think the things that Malcolm was talking about, and so Malcolm in terms of systems and processes and kind of you know, your defining your to-do list, or quite frankly your to don't list,
Yes.
and also, and you know, that's not, you know, that's applicable to anybody. And then Andy's whole, you know, the patient experience and the whole journey that people go through, that can be applicable to your work environment if you're working in the NHS, or, you know, you can kind of start, it gives you a framework to review how you're delivering your service wherever you are.
No, you come for the business tips, you leave with self-esteem. I'm just over the moon.
Jack, can I jump in as well? So one of the things I was thinking, so I agree with everything everybody's saying. I also think from a therapy perspective, so if you're private practice or not, our journey that we're doing, so as a therapist, and we're going to sit in front of, we're going to go patient now, okay? So keeping the therapy world, that, you know, you're explaining a journey, whatever you're trying to rehabilitate, that is a sales pitch. So I think that, you know, as a dad of twins, I can guarantee you're going to be doing sales pitches all the time very shortly, in the sense of you're going to have to, and I'll tell you one thing, your kids will be able to do it miles better than you. With any experience of my daughter, she can pitch the best things at me. And so I think the thing is, I think actually that ethical sales pitch, you know, does also transition into any therapist, because that's fundamentally what we're trying to do. We're trying to give our best clinical advice to somebody and for them to follow it. And if we do our pitch right, if we call it that, you know, that we're going to get compliance, and that which means that that patient or that customer is going to achieve the outcome that they want. So I think, you know, for people that are struggling with that bit and compliance, it might also be a nice session for them to sit in.
Sure, I think that's the thing. There's no one in the. You're selling yourself, but you're also selling a vision of returning to normal function. You're selling perception of a life in which someone wants to have if you're coaching them through a journey that also might result in, say, weight loss or transformation or health behavior change. You're selling a pitch and a vision to them as well as selling yourself. It's something that, of course, sales principles, and it's sometimes a dirty word in healthcare, and it's almost clumsy, and there's certainly none of that here, but also none of that at Therapy Live. We're not going to be failing to unturn stones just because it's not polite to do so. Now, marketing comes into that as well, because the positioning and the way in which you would be framing everything is setting the scene for better marketing. What principles do you feel come through, Micheal, from your stuff then?
Well, I mean, you go back to selling yourself and selling your service. And I think it's really important. People buy people, particularly in the medical field. So I think if you can personalize your offering and brand being yourself as well, I think that's super, super important. Going back to Instagram, I think if you can become a brand in your own right and see yourself as a person, I think that is one place where social media can come in quite handily. But ultimately, it's about, you know, telling people, and we go back to some of the stuff that Celia was talking about earlier about what is the service and so on. It's explaining what the service is and what the pathways are, because a lot of us as patients, I remember I saw my first physio, I thought I was going to be clicked and pressed and I'd come out fixed, and he just looked at me and sent me off with some exercise. And I thought, what on earth is this nonsense? Like, I want someone to fix me. And I think you have to set expectations. You have to let people know exactly the process that they're going to go through. Yeah, and I think all of that has to take place throughout all the parts of the marketing mix as well.
Yeah, it's certainly something that I completely agree with all of what you're saying. It just feels like these are life skills applied to business, because anything other than that, anything that's so niche, it's almost a gimmick, and you wouldn't be on this stream, I can guarantee that, because there's people in this game that have got these like quick and dirty tips, gimmicks in therapy business or healthcare business that actually just result in this fundamentally at the heart of it is a unethical upsell that then is downstream of just this gloss that's actually nonsense and doesn't deliver. And so for you guys to be on the stream, it's no surprise to me that you're finding that the audience will find a massive transferability of all these things because they're broad life principles. As I said, come for the therapy education, leave with a higher self-esteem. You'll be 10 foot taller by the time you leave. It sounds exciting. Now, one final thing from
is just one of the other things that I think you can hear in the theme. A lot of the principles from therapy apply to business. And I think somebody made mention of that earlier. You actually will discover, I think, as a therapist, that the way you work on a patient is one of the things that Heather observed. I now relate to my business as my patient and engage with my business in some ways as if they were my patient. So it's like the transferability does go both directions. Mm. And so one of the things that you can hear and some of the things everyone is saying here is the cross referability back is also really compelling.
The self-improvement piece is at the heart of everything, isn't it? Or trying to, and then improving each other and improving the industry, and sort of the community aspects of what we can try and create certainly can really blend better into business. And I think that's something that we're coming to realize now, especially in the crisis we've been in, that there's businesses that otherwise consider themselves competition to some extent that have come together in various reasons, and we've come to realize that actually we are stronger together, and that in these instances it's these sorts of core principles that will really carry us through, as well as all the other core principles through clinical work that are going to then bring the evidence forward. These are almost the evidence-based tips and tricks that people will find that are at the heart of just self-improvement, and that's what's exciting. I think one thing I'd like to add, just on Mike's question, as well as a couple of others that have been in that direction, they've got some comments here about you can be professional and ethical. Sometimes people think that they don't go well together. People sometimes wonder if there's certain different levels of it. Now, Mike James makes a great point here, saying therapy live is unprecedented. I hope it's the new normal. He's just trolling me now, isn't he? That's what he's doing. The one thing on that is, it's really important that people come to realize that wherever they are in their journey, regardless of what sector they're working in, understanding the musculoskeletal industry in its fullest. You might not gorge on all of this content. It might not be relevant for you if you're 20 years into the NHS with no intention of going anywhere else. But I call bullshit if you think that it's not relevant that your patient hasn't seen another therapist down the road from you that might have seen them while they were on your waiting list. Like I just don't believe you if you don't think that that's relevant, and you understanding that is not relevant. I also think that, as is the majority of cases in our industry, is that people are supplementing income and may well need to do that. And so moonlighting or working part-time within private practice, even if that is something as an associate and always not necessarily needing to get into the meat and the bones of being a business owner yourself, these are really important, relevant variables for you to understand how you can better yourself, but also improve the communication and understand the motives and ethics of the owners in which you're working with or under. And so there's various different ways in which, no matter what type of therapist you are, no matter what corner of the industry you're in, these principles carry through. And fundamentally, we would not have a business of therapy stream on a Physio Matters associated show if it was just going to be about cowboys and Indians and trying to pillage an industry, right? Why would we do that? Why would we suddenly sell out in that direction? Of course it's not. These are core principles with the best in the business, talking about things that are going to be compatible to all of the clinical ethical work and evidence-based practice that you can expect throughout the rest of the show. So please do make sure you dip in and out if you don't feel like it's for you. But also what I expect is we're going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of people that are going to be gorging on this content. And if you do, you're in for a treat, because we've mapped it out as an educational journey And that is what is going to be the killer instinct for this, is going to be a really well-contained package. And so I hope you join us. Thank you so much for those that have commented and are feeding back. If there's any other questions, no doubt leave them below and we'll make the speakers aware, and they can either find it on Facebook, or we'll no doubt get back to you, because they're very much interactive like that. Thank you all for your time on a Friday night. We've enjoyed I've enjoyed your company. I hope it's been worthwhile for all of you, and we'll see you on the 26th of June, therapy-live.co.uk. If you haven't got a ticket now, if you haven't got a ticket yet, then I don't know what you're doing. There's no hope for you by now. You're not one of the now, what is it, Michael, 14,000 registrations today?
Just over 14,000 as of today.
Unbelievable, absolutely ridiculous. I'm increasingly tempted, especially with the announcement of this stream, and then we've got the MSKR policy stream getting announced probably over the weekend. There's 7 incredible panels about the sort of post-COVID landscape, all sorts of really interesting stuff on there. So you've got 7 streams of panels of 3 and 4 people, so you've got like 30 odd big names in that stream. So I think we're going to get to 20,000 delegates. So if you're not joining Therapy Live on the 26th of June, then you're missing out, and it's ridiculous. So please join these wonderful speakers on the 26th, and we'll see you then. In the meantime, send us some messages, send us some information about what you're feeling like you're looking forward to, especially because the agenda's getting announced this weekend. So we're looking forward to hearing all of your pain about struggling to pick which of the 9 streams you're going to be in and which of the sessions you're going to miss out on. I know it seems cruel, but I want to hear about all of that. I want to hear about the pain of what you're struggling to choose. But if you're in business, if you're in the business of therapy, then we know the place for you, and it's certainly with these folk here. So thank you all, and good night. This is always that awkward bit. What a brilliant, I thought that was a mic drop, and here I am trying to find the end live stream. Right, bye.